It was Black Friday, about 5 years ago, and I was thrilled to snag a good deal on a new TV for my room at Best Buy. The chatter about incredible discounts filled me with excitement, but little did I know, the trip would descend into a nightmare. While I was browsing through the TV section, a persistent feeling of being watched crept over me. A man seemed to appear everywhere I went, lurking at the edge of my vision. I tried to shake off the discomfort, but the awareness lingered. After finally selecting my TV and completing my purchase, I was relieved to see the man had stopped shadowing me inside the store. Feeling at ease, I headed to my car, anticipating a night of setting up my new gadget. But as I was about to leave the parking lot, I noticed him again, sitting in his car, eyes locked on me. As I drove away, uneasiness turned to anxiety when I realized he was tailing me, not just out of the strip mall, but onto the freeway and through the suburbs, all the way to my house. Fueled by adrenaline and frustration, I parked my car and marched straight toward his vehicle, where he'd parked inconspicuously in the guest parking spots a few houses down. He looked taken aback, clearly unexpecting my confrontation. I told him firmly to back off and warned that there would be consequences if he didn't stop. He seemed flustered and dismissed any accusations of following me. I took note of his license plate and decided to call the police, though they could only take a report and advised me to stay alert. Later that night, around 3 a.m., I awoke suddenly, but I couldn't pinpoint why. I chalked it up to nerves and headed to the bathroom, planning to grab a glass of water afterward. Living alone meant any unusual noise was cause for alarm, so when I heard what distinctly sounded like a cough or sneeze from downstairs, my drowsiness vanished. Sparkle, my cat, lay beside me, so it couldn't have been him. Realizing someone was in my home, I grabbed my fake gun, hoping its appearance would be enough to intimidate. In the kitchen, I found a man in black stuffing my things into a bag. Anger flared up alongside fear, and I shouted for him to freeze. Startled, he spun around and bolted towards the back door. I chased after him, hurling a plate in desperation, which surprisingly hit its mark but didn't slow him down. Sparkle, braver and quicker than I expected, joined the pursuit and managed to latch onto the intruder's leg, biting fiercely. The man yelped and attempted to shake him off, starting to strangle my cat in panic. Fueled by sheer determination, I kicked the man square in the face, and with a groan, he released Sparkle, who scurried back home injured but free. The man collapsed, dazed, and it was then I recognized him, the same guy from Best Buy. I called the cops immediately, breathless with shock and relief. They arrived and took him into custody, listening to my recount of being followed and now burglarized. They assured me the man would face charges, given this incident. After the ordeal, I rushed Sparkle to the vet. His left leg was bruised and sprained, but otherwise, he was okay. I was in awe of my little hero's bravery. Reflecting on that night, I realized how important it is to be vigilant and aware of your surroundings. I've shared this story countless times as a cautionary tale, emphasizing how critical it is to notice details. To Sparkle, my true champ, I owe endless gratitude. Though he's no longer with me, unrelated to this incident, he remains my best friend. Rest in peace, partner. It's Black Friday, and my friends and I had planned a trip to the mall to hunt for bargains. The energy was infectious, with throngs of people bustling around, excited for the deals. Jasmine and I were caught up in the moment, snapping Instagram pics and updating our Snapchat stories, sharing our finds with everyone. As we roamed from store to store, I got a strange swipe-up notification on Snapchat. It was from someone I knew but hadn't spoken to in a while, which made it all the more peculiar. I intended to read it, but Jasmine eagerly pulled me into Victoria's Secret, convinced we'd lose out on great discounts if we delayed. We were about 30 minutes deep into browsing when loud bangs erupted, echoing like fireworks through the mall. At first, everyone seemed confused, speculating whether it was some Black Friday stunt. But then the realization hit as people began fleeing and screaming. A shooting was happening. Instinct kicked in, and Jasmine and I darted for the exit, caught in the wave of terrified shoppers. In the chaos, I soon noticed our friend Brittany was no longer with us. Jasmine looked at me with panic. She was just here. I don't know where she vanished to. Against all advice, we turned back, frantically searching for Brittany. The scene was pandemonium. Blood streaked the floors, voices shouted frantically for us to move toward safety. Yet, I couldn't shake the determination to find Brittany. My heart pounded in my ears, louder than the chaos around us. Back at Victoria's Secret, the doors were sealed shut. Hopelessness crept in until Jasmine's phone vibrated. It was a text from Brittany. "I'm safe inside the store. Where are you?" Relief washed over us, and we immediately sprinted back towards the exit. Finally emerging into the night outside, our breaths ragged, we watched as police cars surrounded the mall, their sirens piercing the air. We spent the next 5 harrowing hours in lockdown, waiting for Brittany's safe release. Our parents arrived, wrapping us in tearful embraces, relieved beyond words that we were unharmed. Eventually, the gunman was apprehended. Rumors whispered about casualties, but I couldn't bear to dwell on them. I was just thankful my friends and I were safe. While waiting for the lockdown to lift, I remembered the Snapchat message. I finally opened it and felt a chill run down my spine. It was a warning from the person who had messaged me. He had seen my stories and wanted to alert us that there were threats made about a possible shooting. He urged me to stay cautious and suggested we leave if possible. A wave of regret washed over me. If only I had opened it sooner. I quickly replied, thanking him for the warning, explaining that we had been caught up in the chaos, but were thankfully okay. This experience shook me to my core. It was terrifying in a way I never imagined possible, and I hope no one else has to go through something like it. Brittany, Jasmine, and I remain closer than ever, bonded by the terror we faced. Through it all, we're still inseparable, friends to the very end. It was Black Friday night 2 years ago, and honestly, I was grateful for a bit of solitude. My parents and siblings were excited about their annual shopping spree and invited me, but I decided to stay behind. I needed space after a heated argument with my younger brother and sister the day before. My parents always seemed to take their side, and I was just over it. Shortly after they left, I grabbed my headphones and decided to go for a late-night walk. Our neighborhood is dotted with serene lakes, making it a perfect setting to cool down and let some steam off. After circling the first lake, I headed towards another one closer to home. That's when I started to sense that eerie, prickling awareness. You know that feeling when you're alone, but feel like eyes are on you? I glanced back and saw a tall figure, probably a man, not too far behind. Since it was a public area, I brushed it off, but I couldn't shake the feeling of discomfort. Picking up my pace, I veered off the lake trail, opting to lose myself among the neighborhood streets. Perhaps it was just paranoia getting the best of me. But no matter how many turns I took, he was still there, mirroring my every step. The realization he was indeed following me hit hard, and panic set in. I broke into a run, my heart pounding with a desperate intensity. In disbelief, I wondered if this was some twisted prank. It couldn't be real, right? Yet, no logical explanation surfaced as I sprinted towards home. Bursting through my front door, I slammed it shut and killed the lights. I wasted no time calling my dad, the urgency in my voice matching the thudding of my heart as I locked every door and dashed upstairs. As I breathlessly explained the situation, the doorbell rang, slicing through my frantic monologue. My dad, still on the line, asked about the sound. I told him that it might be the person who had followed me. Staying calm despite the terror creeping in, my dad instructed me to check through a window. If it was the same man, I was to hang up and call the police. He assured me he was on his way. Peeking cautiously, dread gripped me as I identified the same figure standing at our doorstep. Hanging up, I immediately dialed 911, my voice shaking but firm as I yelled through the door, claiming the cops were coming and that I was armed. I wasn't, but I needed him to believe I was. The threat seemed to work, as he hesitated and then bolted before the cops arrived. My dad pulled into the driveway shortly after the police. I recounted the ordeal to them, still shaken but relieved to be safe. Unfortunately, there wasn't much they could do. The man was long gone. Even now, 2 years later, that night continues to haunt me, especially as the holidays approach. This happened when I was just 10 years old. Back then, Black Friday shopping was a family tradition, something my mom, dad, and I genuinely looked forward to every year. The excitement in the air, the thrill of finding a great deal, and the hustle and bustle of the crowds, it was all part of the holiday magic for us. But when I was 10, that tradition shattered. It was Black Friday, and the atmosphere was electric, with hundreds of people gathered outside the store, eagerly counting down the minutes until the doors opened. As soon as they did, the crowd surged forward. What started as an enthusiastic push to the front quickly devolved into chaos. The pressure from behind was immense, and people were relentless in their charge. The crowd turned desperate and unyielding, trampling over anyone who fell. I remember the screams, a cacophony of alarm and disbelief, as the situation spiraled out of control. In the frenzy, people fell, only to be stepped on by those behind them. They didn't stand a chance. It was later determined that 2 people died that morning, a worker and an elderly woman. I remember being frozen, watching the scene unfold with wide eyes, unable to fully grasp the horror of what was happening. The police arrived, their lights flashing as paramedics rushed to assist. People were crying, the reality of the tragedy sinking in as they took in the bloodstains and chaos. It was a nightmare, burned into my memory with an intensity that feels fresh no matter how much time has passed. Seeing a lifeless body, knowing they had been right there in the crowd with us moments before, was profoundly traumatic. My parents, too, were in shock, tears streaming down their faces, trying to process the madness that had erupted in what was supposed to be a joyful family tradition. Since that horrific day, our approach to Black Friday has changed drastically. We couldn't bring ourselves to queue up with those intense crowds again. Now we stick to shopping online or visiting stores during regular hours, avoiding any hint of the chaos that once marred a cherished tradition. That day taught us a painful lesson about the depths of human desperation and the fragility of life, and it's something we'll never forget.